Welcome to yet another edition of Sharing Sox, the first one of 2025. I got the year right. And the first one in a long time, involving some personal schedules and also some technical problems that getting it on the air that have been going on for the last couple of weeks. But we are all right and going. I am duty geezer Leigh Allan. With me, my son and West Coast correspondent Will, who is enjoying the warmth of Los Angeles, while we in Chicago are a little on the cool side. But we did avoid the blizzards.
I was just going to ask if you've avoided the
We have
blizzard.
we had snow last night. It's all gone this morning, which is weird because it's not about freezing. We're supposed to get a little snow today, but no. Blizzard went south of us. Your sister and family, who are on vacation in New York, are still on vacation in New York, much to their surprise, because they can't get home to Cincinnati. but,
So they are our East Coast correspondents.
Yes,
for this week's episode of Sharing Sox.
And they are. And I noticed Will sent the whole family a picture of him with the World Series trophy, which is a good thing that you're out in Dodgerland because it ain't going to be in Chicago for a long time. That's for sure.
Correct. Maybe never again. We'll see. No. Someday. So this is our first time touching base here really since the end of the season got started. You know, we have not been active during free agency, which the White Sox certainly have been. They have signed and they have signed
Normally I keep a whole list of everybody that's been signed so we can talk about who's good and who's bad, and it just isn't worth it.
How
it
telling
isn't worth the list. It's all and the bizarre thing, Cam Boozer, he's 34. What the hell good is he doing?
Hey, come on now. Guys in their mid to late 30s could still play Major League Baseball. And I am holding on to that for 2 more years. As hard as I can.
I'm glad to hear that.
I gotta say, it's been so telling that we do a podcast that is based around a Major League Baseball team. And during the winter meetings and the free agent signing period thus far, we have not felt necessarily compelled to discuss any of it. Which you would maybe think means your team is in such a good place that why do we need to go out and get anybody? You know, we're a 97 win team. You don't need to add to that. Save the money. Unfortunately, that is not the case here. So we should start by just talking about the key pieces that have been lost so far. And when I say key pieces, I mean Garrett Crochet and only Garrett Crochet. Garrett Crochet is now a Sox, a horse of a different color of Sox. That trade, and I know we are late to the party and we won't spend a lot of time on this because this is very old news. That trade... pretty good.
I'm okay with it. I'm good with it.
Yeah. I think it took us, I think that trade did what it needed to do, which was take us from a team with absolutely no hope to a team with some hope. And I'm okay with that. We obviously weren't going to get anything we needed out of Crochet anytime soon, other than a reason to watch a baseball game. But I do think that what we got back sets us up for the possibility of getting more things to make us somewhat competitive in 3 to 4 to 5 years.
I'm 2028 is my goal to start being like a 500 team. And maybe other teams have to take seriously. Yeah, I think they're coming back there. Kyle Teal gets rave reviews. I just read Sun Column where somebody said, well, he's going to be rookie of the year. I think we're pushing that a little hard, but apparently he's very good. You know, if we have Kyle Teal and Edgar Caro and sitting off back somewhere, Corey Lee as a catching situation, that could be pretty good. And I still have my thing that I think everybody should be brought up to have a rookie year next year, and we just grow from there, just like a college team would do. We all play together and we learn not to run into each other.
I mean, I think you're going to get your wish because there's no major league players on the team other than Luis Robert.
But they're bringing in all these 30-plus guys. They just did Josh Rojas, who maybe he has been in the past a good player. Last year he had 2 good months, and 4 were, he just didn't exist. But at least he can catch the ball. It'd be nice to have some. The only guy last year who could catch the ball, even Luis did, is gone. Nicky Lopez is gone. So it's going to be, just watching it's going to be horrible. Or listening with John Schriffen. Yeah. Anyhow, we got all these people, all these 30-plus guys who some were technically free agents of their own making, but most were just cast-offs. They were Rule 5s. They were DFA'd, and were garbage hunting, and we pick up whatever garbage we can get. And maybe some of them will have a good year and will only lose 120 games again instead of 130 or more. Yeah, I wrote a column about let's go all rookie and get everybody together. But of course, that means that you've used up the time of team control, and nobody gives up any team control. They manipulate everything about that. Still, I don't know if anybody will go to the ballpark this coming season. I don't know why you would. The Cubs games.
I know why I would, because it's got a cool new name.
Yeah. Rate Field.
It's now Rate Field instead of Guaranteed Rate Field, which I'm guessing Guaranteed Rate has rebranded as Rate.
Yes, yes, it has.
Interesting.
I guess it's maybe it turned out that they weren't guaranteeing it. I don't know.
I have a feeling.
I suspect that somebody complained that you're saying guaranteed, but you changed it on me.
I always had a sneaking suspicion about this company that maybe they didn't quite guarantee the rate. And I feel quite vindicated that they have now completely abandoned guarantee and are now just Rate Field, which I think we only have for 5 more years, 4 more years, something
with
like
the downward facing arrow. But maybe it'll be at the end of the downward facing arrow as the logo. We'll have an upward facing arrow team.
Do you remember when this first happened and Guaranteed Rate took over? And
sure.
It might have been rumor, but I don't think it was, that the White Sox said, we'll cut you a deal if you change it from a downward arrow into a home plate, which is a downward pointing arrow, just of a slightly different shape. And Guaranteed Rate said, now we'd rather have the big red arrow.
I know that the White Sox wanted them to change, and certainly the whole fan base wanted them to change. And they said, no, they're paying the money. It's their show.
It seems like
I could complain. They're not far from where I live. They're over by some theaters that you worked at, the old American, right in that area.
Oh yeah. Well, I agree. I just don't know why anybody would attend a game. You're going to have a couple games against the Cubs at home, so those will be additional home games for the Cubs, I'm sure. I mean, the Cubs aren't going to be anything to write home about either, but their fans are more invested because their team isn't an absolute abysmal train wreck of an organization.
The MLB, MLB Trade Rumors does periodic chat rooms, and the one they did yesterday, their guy predicted the Cubs take the NL Central, but he says I always predict that Milwaukee always wins. So why bother? But the Cubs have been doing a few things. Speaking of MLB Trade Rumors, I went through that entire 2-hour chat room. And for the first time ever, I think, there was no mention even of the White Sox. Nothing about the White, not even, miserable. Well, how can the White Sox ever recover? Blah, blah, blah. Nothing, not a word. But speaking of rumors on free agents now, Ken Rosenthal came out today. We're recording this on Monday, the 6th of January, with where he thinks the 15 best remaining free agents will go. Of course, none of them are going to the White Sox. That's just silly.
I was just going to say, what?
And in most cases, he did multiple. It could be this team or that team. Sometimes 3 of them. the only case where he even mentioned an AL Central team was Jose Quintana, who predicted going to the Royals.
Oh.
So it looks like the AL Central, having celebrated a year of being pretty damn good, except for the White Sox, would like to go back to its role as the worst division in the history of baseball. There's no effort being made.
Well, here's the thing, though. Why would you? So the AL Central got 3 teams into the postseason this year. 2 of those teams I don't think would make the postseason if they didn't get to play the White Sox as much as they got to play the White Sox.
And went 12-1.
Yeah. So why change? Because the White Sox didn't. So if you are likely going to win 88 games up to 91 games because you're going to get to play the White Sox, you're not going 6-6, 6-7 against the White Sox next year. You're going 12-1, 11-2 in a nightmare scenario, 10-3. So there's no reason for this year to be the year that you make big moves, because you kind of just have to repeat. And all those teams did upgrade in minor ways, except for the Twins. But the other teams made small moves that aren't detrimental, that will likely add an additional win. Maybe not much more than that. But I think they're sitting pretty to get 3 teams in again. And I don't know why you would mess with that until you have to. And the only reason you would have to is if Minnesota gets a lot better, or if the White Sox get a lot better. And Minnesota has just done nothing, and the White Sox have done negative.
Well, and the Twins aren't going to do anything. They're still hoping they have a season where all the guys are healthy, including Byron Buxton, who's never healthy.
Right.
Incredible player when he's healthy, but both days,
and if you're in Cleveland, you're in the driver's seat. So why mess around? If you're in Detroit or Kansas City, you're still ahead of your rebuild. So there's no reason to think that the Twins would be healthy enough to win. And there's, of course, no reason to think that you can't win 12 out of 13 against the White Sox. So I definitely understand why they're not making big moves. They're not going to be better than the moves they would have to make to be better than the best teams in the East and maybe the best teams in the West. You're not going to make them. You're not going to make them with a small market. You're not going to sign Soto. You're not going to sign Corbin Burns to $210 million. So
there have been occasional rumors of the Tigers being active with Alex Bregman.
But that's because of AJ Hinch. I think those are rumors. I don't see a world where the Tigers shell out, $250 million to Alex Bregman at this point of his career. I mean, I think there's a reason Alex Bregman isn't signed yet. And it's because it's too much money. It's too much of a gamble. I think Bregman's still good, but I don't think he's great. And I certainly don't think he's going to get better over the next few years. So I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked if Detroit. I mean, look at what happened with Javi Baez. Look at how badly they got burned. And of course, Bregman is a better player than Javi Baez. Of course, Bregman's not going to regress at the rate of Javi Baez. But they got burned so hard by Javi Baez. I just don't see them making that kind of commitment. None of the teams in the AL Central are teams that are going to overspend on one guy right now. I mean, Kansas City, which I think did the best extension in the history of baseball, and what they gave Bobby Witt Jr. to keep him in Kansas City. Kudos to Bobby Witt Jr. as well for taking that deal and showing some semblance of loyalty in a business where nobody actually has any loyalty whatsoever. Bobby Witt Jr., who I think as a human being and a baseball player is kind of a class above everyone else. I just don't think that anyone's going to shell out any sort of big money. And now there's really no one but Bregman on the table who's going to demand over $200 million in a contract. I think any of these teams would be stupid to sign Bregman to that kind of money. I think it's the exact kind of deal that could cost you in the long run. They are in extremely successful rebuilds. Detroit making the playoffs ahead of schedule. Kansas City making the playoffs way ahead of schedule. Making the playoffs a year after a 100-loss season. These are teams that have done really, really great things, not spending that kind of money. So I just don't see a world where anyone pulls the trigger on Bregman. I think he's going to go to one of the overspending teams. The classics. Yeah, he'll end up in the NL West or the AL East. Is what I most likely think happening there.
Yeah, that's the probability. West Coast or East Coast. That's the situation. And even if it's not one of the big spenders, I guess Seattle would be the next possible shot. Also,
Seattle's in an interesting situation yet again, where they theoretically have the best rotation in the league. I would violently argue that if the Dodgers can stay healthy. I think if the Dodgers rotation can stay healthy and if they sign Roki Sasaki.
The latest Sasaki rumors, and I don't know if this was maybe New York Times or where it is, that not the Dodgers was the suggestion. And that it would be because of his relationships with various people, either in New York or the Padres.
Yeah, I mean the Padres. Yeah, we'll talk about this because there is technically still a chance Sasaki goes to the White Sox.
No, I think he ruled that out, didn't he? Didn't they say we're down to 29 teams and it won't be the White Sox?
They ruled it out. They ruled it out, but the ink's not dry. So maybe he thinks he looks great in black pinstripes. I don't know. And he's on such a cheap deal that he has White Sox written all over him. No matter what the number ends up being, it will be under $10 million a year. Obviously not going to the White Sox. I think Sasaki, I'd be surprised if he goes anywhere but LA or San Diego. The main reason being you either want to learn how to get great under Shohei or Yamamoto, or you want to learn how to get great under your mentor, Yu Darvish. And
the reason was given for it not being the Dodgers was that because he has done what he's done and not wait until the big bucks to come out. So he's got limited salary on the international signing rules. That because his income is going to be almost all endorsements.
Yeah.
And they'll be huge. But that if he's a Dodger, he's Japanese endorser 3.
Correct.
Whereas with other teams, he can be either Japanese endorser 1 or at worst 2. Whereas he's always going to be behind Ohtani and Yamamoto for years.
I mean, in reality, as someone with some firsthand knowledge, if he comes to the Dodgers, he's going to be Japanese endorser number 8. The first 6 are Ohtani, and then Yamamoto in the 7, and then Sasaki in the 8. Ohtani is just so far beyond everybody else. It's not even a conversation. Yamamoto, I think, receives very little endorsement compared to if he had gone to a team potentially without a Japanese star. Do I think Yamamoto regrets this? No. He's got the richest pitching contract in history, and he has a World Series ring already. Sasaki, I think what it will come down to truly is do you want to be under Ohtani or do you want to be under Darvish? And I do think that if he were to go to the Padres, he probably in a couple years becomes the number 1 endorsed Japanese player south of Los Angeles, of course. There is no point within the next decade where he becomes the most important Japanese figure on the Los Angeles Dodgers. That being said, you kind of are going to go to the World Series if you come to Los Angeles. And I do appreciate, I've been reading a lot of the Sasaki stuff, and I do like the way his agent talks, which is that this kid is not ready. This kid is not a major league star yet. He's not even close. The reason he's coming over is so that he can develop into a major league star over the next 2 years and then potentially get a monster deal. I like that. That actually kind of makes me think he's likely to go to the Dodgers because it shows an absence of ego that I think would help you go to a team where you're not. I also think there is just something good about coming over here and not being in the absolute spotlight when you are 23 years old.
Yeah,
the fact of the matter is he's great in Japanese baseball. Japanese baseball is most equivalent to about AAA in the United States. So if you're 23, you're coming over, you're going to play Major League Baseball. You're not going to the minor leagues. So don't you kind of not want to be in the spotlight the first 2 years where you could be struggling? You come to LA and you are the third Japanese pitcher in the rotation. Your mistakes are going to be forgiven a lot more. They're going to be forgiven a lot more as you're learning. If you go somewhere where people are expecting you to be the one or the two, pressure is going to be on. And, as the agent has said, and as Sasaki has said, he needs to learn to be a good Major League Baseball pitcher. And I think he will. His raw talent is unbelievable, but raw talent against Japanese hitters is not the same as getting to that level against major league hitters who are the best hitters in the world. I mean, there's no question about that. You are facing a level of hitter you have never faced before outside of the World Baseball Classic. But almost everybody good that you face in the World Baseball Classic plays Major League Baseball in the United States. You're almost never facing a guy where they're like, he is one of the best hitters in the world and he plays in so-and-so. That just doesn't happen. If you're great, you play here. That's just what it is. We should take a break here, though, and we will come back and talk more about the Chicago White Sox, I guess. I guess that's what we'll do. So hang in there, and we will be right back on Sharing Sox. Welcome back to Sharing Sox. We dissected some of the White Sox bold offseason moves, and by bold,
I do want to give, because we're going to obviously not be impressed with the players that they brought in because there's no reason to be impressed. I want to give Chris, and I'm not a Getz fan, and I think he's been a total failure for 7 years in player development, and promoting them was just the ego of Jerry Reinsdorf going nuts. But I do give him credit for what he's done front office wise. Well, first, Will Venable, I think, in the managerial side, the opening up coaching slots was good. They've done a lot of things to increase research, putting more money into it. They couldn't be worse. They were worst in the major leagues.
I'm like, if you put 20 bucks
at least
into it,
going up, they're years behind. Which brings me to one word. And I think the word will be usable on the south side of Chicago now. I can't find it definitively. Traject. You've been around Traject with the Dodgers. Have you ever seen it actually in action?
Traject.
That's the pitching machine that totally simulates any major league pitcher.
Yeah, I have seen the machine. I have not seen it in action. No.
As of September, I read that there were 19 major league teams that have gone into it. The Cubs, incidentally, were first. They did it in 2021. They were ahead of the curve. But really? all the big spending teams are in there. But it was 19 by September, and I know there's never been any mention about the White Sox. I have seen one line in one site mentioning White Sox and Traject as if they are getting the machine finally. I've wondered all along if maybe Miguel Vargas was missing the machine when he came to the Sox and suddenly was hitting 040.
Possible, quite possible. I mean, that machine, think of the advantage. Like, it's just a crazy preparation advantage to have a machine like that versus a traditional pitching machine. Like, it's.
Yeah, you mean, for those who are not familiar, I think most people who would listen to this are familiar by now, but it is a pitching machine that totally simulates any pitcher. You feed in video from that pitcher, and you will be facing that pitcher. There's a video of him right there on the machine. The ball is coming out of his arm slot. they have got all the computerized information. His slider normally breaks 6 inches. The ball will break 6 inches. Now, pitchers change all the time. The machine has to stay the same, so it's not an absolute by any means, but it's a hell of a break. You're going into a game against a starting pitcher that you figure you face at least a couple of times, and you've seen him.
Yeah,
you've seen his latest stuff, and I'm sure all the teams keep up to date on the video. So it's absolute. If he changed the way he grips his curve, it's changed in the machine.
Exactly. That's what makes it so valuable. It's not like it shows up on the doorstep and whatever was loaded in on the screen in 2022 is what you have. It's constantly changing. It's constantly changing. So, if Paul Skeens decides, I'm going to release my slider a quarter of an inch lower this year than I did last year, the machine's going to reflect that. And that is just an unbelievable advantage in preparation. I mean, as I've always said, when the whole steroid thing happens, and then when the whole Astros cheating thing happened, as a former pitcher, I'd rather face 10 out of 10 times guys on steroids than guys who know what pitch is coming and where it's coming from, because hitters are too good. It's one thing to be really strong. It's another thing to know exactly where to put the bat when that ball is coming. And this machine prepares you for exactly that. And it prepares you well for that. I mean, this technology, I think these machines cost over $1 million a piece.
I've read. I've been on the Traject site, and I think they mostly lease them.
Yeah.
But it's a little more expensive than your car lease. It's big money leases.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be shocked if the White Sox invested that kind of money. Maybe they will. They should.
It looks like maybe with the new people that they're doing it, we'll find out as it goes on. But I've not seen anything. If I search Traject and White Sox, it's like this one thing of somebody mentioning somewhere that could be coming. I have not seen anything that says, "Oh, the White Sox have a Traject now. This is going to help the players." Now, the question is if your players pay attention. Does Luis Robert Jr. pay any attention to what the hell the machine is trying to tell him? Because he obviously now has no idea what pitch is coming or where it's intended to go.
Yeah.
And now, is that a failure to work, or is it just that he hasn't been trained adequately to do that?
Well, what I would say is in that scenario, it's that he's failure to work, because you do know what pitch is coming.
It's a slider off the plate.
Exactly. Luis Robert might be the only guy in baseball right now where I can tell you what pitch is coming, because he can't hit it. And you're getting a slider off the outside of the plate probably 80% of the time if you're Luis Robert. So I think Luis Robert's woes are not necessarily something Traject can fix. But it certainly would help if he's paying attention with something like that. Of course, he probably has never gotten to use one. But yeah, the Luis Robert thing is a whole, which, we should talk about Luis Robert because he is the remaining major leaguer ish on the Chicago White Sox. He's certainly still
certainly 2023, he was one of the best players in baseball. And
yes, I mean,
a sudden collapse.
He is, in terms of raw talent and tools, I still think he is an elite talent in Major League Baseball. Now, what we got to have happen, because it's looking more and more like he's not going to go before the start of the season. It's looking.
Yeah, apparently, the White Sox are probably just asking too much, but what the White Sox have to really hope then. And he needs to hope too. I think for his sake, he needs to go to a good baseball team. He seems like a guy who is very susceptible to his mental state. Sure. And I don't blame him. I mean, he spent years playing center field between two schlubs who could have been picked out of the stands for as good as they were out there. And trying to play this great center field going from one foul line to the other. I don't blame him for being really sad about his situation, But he needs to somehow buck up in order to get to a better situation, which I thought he would have done, toward the end of last year. Maybe he was in just such a rotten groove that he couldn't get out of it.
But here's
because he was still striking out time after time after time.
Here's where my patience ends a little bit with that. And I've been very patient. I'm a huge Luis Robert guy. I've really enjoyed watching him play, with the exception of last year. And where I run out of any sort of, grace is if you are in that situation where you are stuck in center field between two schlubs, you're stuck in a batting order with no one to protect you. You work harder than you've ever worked in your life, because you are talking about a multi-$100 million swing in payment when you hit free agency. I mean, he is a guy where if he buckles down and works hard and figures this out using the tools that he naturally has, you're talking about a guy who's going to make hundreds of millions of dollars. If you don't do that, you're a guy who fades out of Major League Baseball quickly. And that is such a range with how your life can go, especially in professional sports, where in a great scenario, you are retiring in your mid to late 30s. Your window is not long. There's no world where Luis Robert's like, well, I'll get him when I'm in my 40s. So I don't understand the lack of work ethic when I would be focused from day one on getting the hell out of there. I wouldn't be mean about it. I would try to be a good teammate. I would try to have camaraderie, but my focus would be my game, because Major League GMs, scouts, they know the difference between being a great player on a terrible team and being a mediocre player. And the circumstances you're in only go so far. There's not that much sympathy for that. So if you are in a situation where you should far and away be the absolute best player on a team and you're not, people aren't going to roll the dice on that. They don't like that. What they want to see is a guy who's the absolute best player on a bad team showing everyone else up day in and day out. And that's how you're going to get that money. I mean,
Bobby Witt Jr. 2 years ago.
Exactly. And
Salvi Perez, to go for that for an older player.
Salvi Perez for years and years. I mean, Salvi Perez is, he's an anomaly with how great of a guy he is. That in sports or out of sports. I mean, he is just a top tier human being and top tier athlete, professional athlete. If I'm Luis Robert, I'm working harder than everyone else. I'm showing the other teams how great I am to have on the team as a teammate, as a leader, as a clubhouse guy, and as a player. Of course,
I think it is unfair to go to him as leader. I think Luis is he's a quiet guy.
But you have to be. You are on a team with 22-year-olds and schlubs. Like, you have to be the leader. I don't care if you don't want to be the leader. You are getting paid millions of dollars. You are an elite talent. You have to be the leader. Most teams you'll go on, you won't even have that opportunity. If Luis Robert came to the Dodgers right now, he doesn't even have the opportunity to be the leader. And so he wouldn't have to worry about it. You have to be the leader if you want to go somewhere where you don't have to be the leader.
Yeah.
You really do. You really do. And unfortunately, I don't think that Luis at this moment is up for that challenge. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he comes out just absolutely on a whole new level in 2025. If he is smart at all, he will, because it's going to be the difference. I mean, obviously, if you're smart about spending, you're already set up for life. If you're smart about spending, you're already fine, even with his deal, which was considered extremely team-friendly at the time. But if you talk to anyone and you say, hey, in 5 years, would you like to be making $45 million, or would you like to be making no dollars? most sane people are going to say, what do I need to do to get the $45 million? That's just how capitalism works. It's just how everything works. So I hope he comes out. And of course, I know that me hoping that Luis Robert is great means Luis Robert is absolutely not on the White Sox anymore. I'm hoping for a guy to be great so that he's not on the team that I care about. But I've liked him so much. I want that for him. I want him to.
Yeah. I really loved him. One of my saddest things I can remember watching, excuse me, on baseball and TV was the Home Run Derby 2023, where he had a real good first round and was in good contention. And then they showed close-ups of the various players who were involved, and they'd be with family or teammates, and he was on his own.
Yeah.
The stupid blankety blank White Sox didn't have the damn sense. And he's not married. His parents are still in Cuba. The White Sox had no sense to send somebody out there. Who were his best buddies on the team? Send them out there. So he had somebody with him, and you could see a happy group of White Sox people, and there was nobody. And the poor kid, I mean, we think of guys who've been veterans as being old, but they're kids. Even veterans, they're young. Kids.
Yeah.
And he was just left out there stranded by this stupid team. And I just said, man, I felt sorry for him. Yeah, I just wanted to, fly out to wherever that game was and pat him on the back. Hey, guy,
Yeah.
It was sad.
That was so disappointing to see. And I think it's the story of Luis Robert. I think the White Sox have failed him time and time again. I think most teams, when you get a guy like that, you do everything you can to help him succeed. You build around a guy like that, because it not only is it from a baseball standpoint of wanting to win and wanting to, but from a business standpoint, you prop up a guy like that to make him great. Because what does that do? It puts butts in the seats. It helps you keep your TV deals. It sells jerseys. It gets people excited. And instead, they just sort of let him flounder in this organization. And, I'm grateful that we got to see some of what he's capable of when he is inspired. But I really want him to go somewhere where he can be inspired again.
I do too. There's no sense or they've got 2 more years of team control with the options. 3 more years, including the contract, and then 2 years of options. And there's no way the White Sox are any good in those 3 years. There just isn't.
No.
And unless Jerry Reinsdorf, dies tomorrow, and somebody willing to spend money buys the team, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Now he's going to live to be 146, but Virginia McClaskey's 102. Chicago sports are just doomed.
They're doomed. They're so doomed. What a nightmare.
He'll probably outlive her and me. You got a chance to outlive him.
I don't know. I think he and I think when I'm in the hospital in my final days, they're going to be like, here's your roommate, Jerry Reinsdorf. And then I'll have an opportunity to do what every Sox fan has wanted to do.
Pull the plug.
And that'll be my last hurrah. Yeah, it's a real bummer. And, I hope Luis comes out just absolutely incredible. One, because I want him to go somewhere with the chance to win and with the chance to show, with the chance to be in an organization that will support him. And I also want him to come out great because we need to get something back. And right now we're not. We're absolutely not.
You would not get a whole lot. If you have a team desperate for a center fielder, you might get their number 4 and 6 prospects, something like that. You're not getting anybody's top guy.
But everybody knows right now that they just kind of have to wait. It's not an urgent situation with Luis Robert right now. Nobody's season is changing right now by getting Luis Robert right now as he is. That can change dramatically depending how April and May and June go. That can change very dramatically. in which you could be in a position to get someone's top prospects for a guy like that. But he has to come out with looking like a different guy. He can't look at all like he looked in 2024 because you've got no leverage if he doesn't. I mean, if we got rid of Luis Robert right now and he went to a decent organization or a winning organization and that fire was lit under his butt the way I think it would be, it's going to be a famously bad deal for the White Sox because right now you're not getting nothing. You're not getting nothing. Like you're talking about a 200 hitter who's okay in the outfield right now. You're getting nothing for that. And you can say, oh, but look at this tape from 2022. Look at this tape from 2020, from 2023. Well, people are going to say, yeah, but what about 2024? We'll give you our 18th best prospect, and you can't make that deal. So the White Sox should be doing everything in their power to make this guy great. I would be putting all of my resources. I honestly wouldn't even think about anyone else on this team right now. I would say if I'm Chris Gatz, I'm saying my goal is to make Luis Robert great again by April. And so he comes out and has the potential to save the White Sox organization by being so good that we can get rid of him. God, pro sports are fun, huh? Here we are talking about a guy that we really like, that we want to be great so that we can not have him anymore. What an exciting thing we have here with pro sports. But we'll see what happens. That is about all the time we have for our first pod of 2025. Do you have any final thoughts? Let's do something bold here real quick. Let's go ahead. It is January 6th, 2025. I just want your prediction. We're not going to go in depth. I just want to know who are the two teams that are going to be in the World Series and who is going to win it.
Wow. Thinking about the White Sox and them throwing out the World Series, that's your mind has totally.
Right. I should
totally
explain
changed.
what the World Series is.
Yeah. No, I remember. My memory is not that shot. I can't remember the World Series.
Okay, cool.
Okay, who's going to be? I mean, it's kind of unfair and sleazy and chalk, but I think the Dodgers are back. And in the American League, I think is much tougher.
Much tougher.
It's the best teams are all in the National League. I mean, if you took the four best teams, it's the Dodgers and the Phillies and Atlanta and the Mets. That's
Padres.
four. The Padres. That's five of them before you come to the Yankees.
Yeah.
And I refuse to predict the Yankees
the
in the World
Brewers.
Series,
Yeah.
even if the who would I'll give you a totally off the wall, because if they make another move, it could happen. And the odds are if you're going to bet on it, your odds will be very long and very good.
Okay.
The Red Sox.
This is crazy. I told a coworker yesterday, I think the Red Sox are going to win the East. And I know that that's insane. And I know on paper that's insane. But I agree with you. I think it is going to be a rematch of the 2018 World Series between the Dodgers and the Red Sox. And I do think the Dodgers are going to win it, which I will share since this is sharing Sox. Do you remember when we were playing baseball, when me and some guys outside in Kentucky, and I think we sent a ball not through a window. We broke the shutters of the lady who lived across the street, the veterinarian lady. And she called over to the house and said, I want you to replace all my shutters. They just broke one of my shutters. And you stormed out the front door and you yelled at all of us, have you ever thought in the way of a brain? And this is a quote that has lived in infamy.
I don't remember it. I refuse to agree that
when I reconnected with both two buddies from the neighborhood over the last few years, they both, separate from each other, and they have not spoken in years, brought up, have you ever thought in the way of a brain? And what I will say is, I think if you don't think the Dodgers are going to win the World Series again, you are not thinking in the way of a brain. The AL is way more open, but I think in the NL, if you are thinking in the way of a brain, it's going to be the Los Angeles Dodgers. They have, legally rigged it in their favor. So I do think that will be the case. So for all of our viewers out there, I just want you to as soon as this podcast ends, all of our listeners, I just want you to sit there and think in the way of a brain and get 2025 off to a good start. Thanks so much for listening, and we will catch you next time right here on Sharing Sox.